14.2 exercise programs. So before doing the actual exercise program, before planning it and before actually participating, I will complete a PAR-Q with the client just to ensure that they are still healthy and still in good health and able to participate. Here you can see the one that I've done before I've created this training plan. And I also did a lifestyle questionnaire that was the information beforehand for me to base all of this exercise program on. All of that allowed me to create a client profile, including all the details that I would need specifically for this program. So this might be their nutritional background, that might affect if I do exercise to focus on burning fat, their lifestyle details, so what I need to plan around, so their other commitments outside of this, so college was one, and rugby training was also another, and also the barriers that they have to exercise. So luckily the client didn't have any barriers in terms of injury or anything, so that is good. We can go ahead with the training program. And the interests for this client were obviously rugby, and he says he quite likes cycling, but he has no preference for what type of training he would like to do. During the program that I've created, my client will be working at very high intensities of around 80%. So before that I needed to figure out their maximum heart rate, which was 189 beats per minute, and 80% of that, which was 151. That would enable me to track that they are working in that zone during the program. My client's specific targets were generally, so the 6 weeks was to gain 30 centimetres of progress on his standing broad jump, the test that we did prior to this to determine that his power was a weakness, which we'll be working on in the session. And the short term after 3 weeks was to gain 10 centimetres on that. So after 3 weeks, 10 centimetres, and after 6 weeks, gain 30 centimetres progress. That was a goal that we set together based off of his weakness in the testing that we did beforehand, and also for his personal goals, which were to gain muscle mass, as gaining muscle mass will increase that power in his legs, ensuring a further distance. Another sidelined goal was to lose a little bit of weight. It wasn't his main focus, but it was something that he said he'd quite like to do as well, which will be incorporated in the exercise program and the type of training that he does. But specifically to the sport or activities he does, rugby players need high muscle mass and low fat percentage to have power and agility to weave through and sprint past the opposition. The components of fitness that I will focus on is his power and his aerobic and anaerobic endurance. So the all energy systems would be used for that, but generally the main ones I'm focusing on in the exercise program is anaerobic glycolysis, and the ATP PC system as well for those short bursts that I'll be doing. So the muscle groups that I'll focus on are the hamstrings and quadriceps for leg power, but also there will be a little bit of focus on kind of his lats as well and glutes, as they're kind of other muscle groups that assist that. But yeah, to specifically measure that, I will be doing a standing broad jump test regularly, so on the 3 week mark and the 6 week mark, and his starting point is 2.1 metres, so I'll measure to check the progress that he is making. So the main type of training my client will do is plyometric training. This is because his main target for himself was to gain more muscle. This correlates with my goal for him to improve his power in his legs, which was a weakness. His score was below average in the standing broad jump test before this 6 weeks, so my long-term goal for him after 6 weeks is to increase that to a good score, with a shorter goal of improving to average after 3 weeks. I feel this is achievable as he wasn't far off average originally, and the plyometric training is very focal and replicative of use of power in his legs. I'm focusing on power in his legs due to the demand as a rugby player to make sprints down the wing, to beat the pace of opposition, and to score a try, perhaps. To test this progress, I'll use the standing broad jump test on week 3 and week 6. Week 1 of his plyometric training includes a session on a Monday at 9 a.m. for an hour before college, and on a Friday at 1 p.m. after college. He will only train twice in this first week, as he not only needs rest days so that he can recover from the sessions, allowing his body to adapt and to prevent an injury, but also because he has other pre-existing exercise commitments in the form of his rugby training or rugby matches. Each week I will change the content of each session to ensure that he doesn't get boredom. However, for example, I have 2 plyometric sessions this week. They will consist of the same thing because I want to focus on the same muscle groups in his legs. So the activities that I've chosen within the session are specific to that. So I don't want to change that in the week. I'll simply change it over each week. Instead of changing each individual session, I'll change them each week to ensure that he doesn't get tedious. So the 2 plyometric sessions this week will run as follows. The warm-up will be using a ladder, and going up the ladder initially he'll be doing 2-footed jumps, and then as he comes back down he'll do a backwards jog. Going up the second time he'll have 1 foot in each, and down he will jog back. Going up the third time he will hop up on one leg in each of the slots and cross step back. And obviously the opposite leg after that, and cross step back again. Then going up he will go 2 feet in, 2 feet out, and side step back, and he will run through that entire thing twice. After that there will be a distance set out, and he will be lunging forwards initially up to a cone and back, and then he will do that a sideways lunge up and the opposite direction back. Then he will hold his heels to his glute and turn that into a lunge going up, and coming back he'll do a lunge and twist to stretch his latissimus dorsi, and then lastly he will do some arm stretches, so pulling arm across the body as he walks up and doing arm circles as he walks back. The warm-up focuses on his quads and hamstrings mainly, because those are the main muscle groups being used in the main session, but it also focuses on his groin, hip flexors and lats, as those will be assisting in the muscular contractions as well during the main session, so I need to warm up his whole body really. Moving on to the main session then, and how the actual plyometric training will run. So there will be 3 sets per exercise, and each exercise or movement he does will be anaerobic, so he'll be working in that 80% of his maximum heart rate that I mentioned earlier, as the sprints that he will do are anaerobic, so it's replicative of the sprinting that he will do in a rugby game. He will have 2 minutes rest between sets. So the session consists of single leg hops, alternating legs, depth jumps with a double leg takeoff, obstacle jumps with a double leg takeoff, box jumps with a double leg takeoff, tuck jumps and split jumps, and for each of them it will be 10 reps, and obviously the 3 sets overall, so once you go through there's 3 sets of it. In total it will take approximately 40 to 45 minutes. So it will be 2 times a week, an intensity of 80% of their maximum heart rate, 3 sets of 10 reps for each exercise. This is because I don't want to be too intense at the start, as he won't be able to cope with the demands and won't be able to complete the session with correct technique if I push him too hard. That'll mean he won't be able to make those improvements. It also leaves room for progressive overload, which wouldn't be able to occur as easily if I started with higher reps and sets. So I feel this is an appropriate level to begin with. And the time is obviously 40 to 45 minutes overall, which means it doesn't eat into his busy college day too much, but also pushes him to work in that state long enough for it to take an effect on his body, so adaptations to his muscles can occur. The cool down will consist of a line of cones, and he will jog through them and back, and then the second time he'll jog through and jog backwards. The third time he'll sidestep, changing direction each cone and back. Then he'll lunge at each cone and jog back. He will then open the gate at each cone as he goes up and close the gate as he comes back. Then finally he will lunge and twist up and jog back. There'll be 8 cones overall. The cool down focuses on his quads, hamstrings, glutes and groin again, as those were the main muscles used in the session. But again, the lats will also be focused on as well, because they are aiding in the movements used in the session. His recovery days in this first week will not include any exercise at this point in the programme. This is because he's very busy with college and other commitments such as his rugby, so he doesn't have an awful lot of time to get work done. It's also so that I don't overwork him and overwhelm him with the amount of exercise he does, causing him injury or delayed onset of muscle soreness, because he's already training very often at the moment, so his body won't have adjusted to be able to work every single day yet. So the session that I just outlined will occur on both a Monday morning and a Friday afternoon. So that same session will occur. But because it's only twice a week, it shouldn't be too tedious. In the second week, I will change the warm-up so that he doesn't get bored of it. This will be consisting of a zigzag format where the cones are dotted in a zigzag. So initially he will jog 2 and touch each, and that will be through to the end, and then he will sidestep through and touch each cone, and he'll do that twice, obviously opposite directions. Then he will go backwards through and touch each cone. Then he'll lunge to each cone, and then arm swings backwards from that. And then he will open the gate at each cone, and then he will close the gate at each cone. Again, this focuses on his main muscle groups that he will use, so his hamstring and quads, but it also changes the warm-up so that he gets something new from last week, which should help prevent tedium. It means that there's increased elasticity of the muscles that he'll be using in the main session, and it also means that his pulse is raised and there's an increased blood flow. This will prevent any injury during the session from stiff muscles, as they'll be more elastic and able to complete these fast movements without injury.